So today I'm continuing with a series that I'm calling Life is Art. And for those of you who haven't been here in the past few weeks, the idea about the series is that we bring forth the idea of an artist, is that an artist brings forth from the invisible realm into the visible, some idea. Artists that paint bring this idea, this vision, and they paint and they make this beautiful piece of art. Or musicians or composers, they create art by bringing these divine ideas into manifestation. And I believe that our purpose as the artists of our lives is to bring forth into manifestation that energy that is beyond, the energy of our soul, our divine self, our divine nature, if you will. And so as artists of our lives, we're here to bring that into manifestation. And so this week I want to talk about one aspect of that, I think, is the art of aligning. The art of aligning. And what I mean by that is, everything in the universe is energy. We live in a universe of energy, right? And everything is vibrating, everything is resonating, everything is moving at a particular frequency. Everything. Science tells us that. And so aligning, I think, is aligning in our consciousness with that vibrational frequency, if you will, of our divine self, our Christ self, the I am of us. And it's sort of like, I've used the analogy before, but it's like aligning through our intention. We align sort of like on a radio dial. I think most of you here are old enough to remember when radios had dials. Mike and Brooke, are you not? Okay, you remember that. But just in case, I wanted to remind you of what one might look like. See the dial over there? On an old-fashioned radio, you had to dial to get to the station you want. And every station is broadcasting at a particular frequency. And so if you want to listen to country music, you dial it to a certain frequency. If you want to listen to jazz, a different frequency. So you use that dial to align with the frequency that you want, you intend. And so when you dial to that, then your radio begins to broadcast whatever frequency that radio station is broadcasting, right? You begin to play that. And so I think we are very similar to that in a way. That we are always broadcasting some energy, some frequency. But what is that frequency? And are we aligned to the frequency of our divine self in what we are broadcasting to the universe? And what we know what we know about the law of attraction is what we broadcast is then what we get back, right? So energy attracts energy. And so as long as we continue to broadcast the same thing, we continue to get the same thing, right? So if we want something different, we have to adjust our frequency. To adjust to the frequency that we're tuned to. And how do we do that, I think, is through intention. It's setting a very clear intention for what we want to align to, therefore, what we want to broadcast. And what I'm thinking about is, as I'm talking about the soul, the divine self, the divinity that we are, is what we want to align to. And that's what we want to broadcast. And in so doing, we create of our lives a work of art that mirrors the masterpiece that you are in the mind of God. You are God's masterpiece. And when we align with that vibration of the masterpiece that we are, then we begin to live it, right? We begin to broadcast it. And then we begin to attract into our lives that which is in resonance with that. And so my idea for this series is to offer some ideas, maybe some practical tools, practical ways to think about how do we do that. So today is about aligning. And so setting a clear intention, I think, is the first aspect of that. And an intention is not the same as an affirmation. What are we intending? And so today I want to offer a statement of intention that I would like for us to look at today and maybe embrace as we go forward this week. And that is, I will to will the will of God. I am. Are you willing to say that with me? Let's say it together. I will to will the will of God. I am. Say it again. I will to will the will of God. I am. Now, what do I mean by that? I want to take that apart a little bit. When we set an intention, we want to be clear about what we are setting, what the intention we're setting. So I want to take it apart a little bit and talk about, first I want to go from the end, and that is the I am. What is the I am? The I am is that Christ self, is the divine self, is the soul, is the higher self. Whatever terminology works for you. You know, we talk about it in unity as the Christ of our being, the I am. That may not work for you. So use whatever, the light, the higher self, the divinity, whatever that is that works for you. So the I am. So what is then the will of God? We talk a lot about the will of God, or we hear a lot about the will of God, or if something happens, then some people say, well, that must be God's will. Well, the will of God is that you and I accept that we are the will of God. That we accept that we are the I am. That we embrace our divinity now. The will of God, as we understand the will of God, God being that source of all, that source of all from which you and I are created as its image likeness, and that the will of God could only be that you and I recognize and realize that we are that divine nature. So that's when we talk about the will of God. The will of God for you and the will of God for me is the very same thing. It's just that we recognize and realize and reveal to the greatest capacity that we can our Christ self, our soul, our own masterpiece. And we do that now. So when we talk about the will of God, that's what we mean. Well, that's what I mean when I talk about the will of God. In fact, I came up with a will of God statement that I've shared before, but I want to share it with you again today. I, God, being the one mind and without body, do hereby declare and decree this to be my last will and testament. I herewith bequeath all that I am to you. You are heir to the entirety of my kingdom. Please note, however, that my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is of spirit. You are heir to the indivisible whole of the all. All the peace, love, and joy that you can imagine are yours. I do joyously proclaim this to be my irrevocable will. As love God. That, I believe, is God's will for you and for me. And I made little cards if you want to take them with you today. It has that statement on the back of it. You can put it in your wallet if you care to. You may not care, I don't know. But in case you'd like to, I have some copies, and the ushers will have copies in the back. But the will of God, as we teach it, is for you and I to know our truth and to demonstrate that truth in the world. So when we say, the next piece of that is, I will to will. What does it mean to say, I will to will? I think when we say to will means to choose. I choose the will of God. I am. The will, to will, refers to our gift of free will choice, I think. Do we recognize that we're choosing at every moment what we're aligning to? Every moment of every day, we are exercising our free will choice. What are we choosing to align to? Charles Fillmore said in The Revealing Word, or it says in The Revealing Word, man's inherent freedom to act as he determines. There can be no perfect expression without perfect freedom of will. So we all have free will choice. Now, the way I like to look at free will, again, I just share with you my perspective. Doesn't mean it's the right perspective. It doesn't mean that it's the unity perspective necessarily. But what I perceive as our free will choice is our choice to say yes. Our free will, the power of our free will choice lies in our ability and willingness to say yes. Yes to what? Yes to the divine will. Yes to the will of God. Because what I recognize about that is that even if we think we're saying no, we're actually saying yes. If you notice that when you resist something, when you say no to something, you're still including it in your energy vibration. And even when you say no to something, when you're resisting something, you actually are also saying yes to something else. Have you noticed? If I'm saying no, it's like, and I'm sorry, the air conditioner's not working. Would you pray for that too? I'm sorry, but whew. When we say no to something, behind the no, there's always a yes. You know, I was thinking about Nancy Reagan had that, what do you call that? That program about just say no to drugs. Just say no. Just say no. Well, what are you saying? What if you're saying no to drugs, what are you saying yes to? Life, health, vibrancy, wholeness. So rather than say no to drugs, how about saying yes to life? How about saying yes to freedom? How about saying yes to being present? If I'm saying no, I don't want sickness, what am I saying yes to? Wholeness, vitality. So I think it's important for us to recognize what are we saying yes to and say yes to life. One of my very first ministers in New Thought used to encourage us to always say yes to life. Let's do that together. Yes! Let's do it 3 times. Yes, yes, yes. I say yes to life. I say yes to joy. I say yes to vitality. What are we saying yes to? That is the power of our free will. So when I say I will, to will, the will means to choose, to say yes to my spirit, yes to the Christ nature of me, yes to my divinity now. Yes. And align with that now. Yes. I choose that. And notice as you go about your day how often you say no to things. How often we resist what is. And how we want things to be different. One of my things, which is so interesting, is that I hate to be hot. I don't really like to sweat. Huh? I moved here from Texas, yes. So you can imagine how irritable I was for 30 years. What was that? So I'm all about saying no to heat. I don't like being hot. And so I find myself resisting it. Rather than saying yes to what is I want. I want to be comfortable. I want to feel good. What am I saying yes to? Yes to the beautiful breeze that was flowing through the hallway as we open the doors today. Yes to the beautiful sunshine that we get to enjoy so often here in Colorado. Yes to the cool weather. Yes to all of those things that I want to say yes to. So just even those little things, we find ourselves resisting as we go about our days. What do you want to say yes to? And say yes primarily, I believe, to that divine self. And the next part of that, the first part of that statement is, I will to will. So what are we saying when we say I will? Well, when you say I will, you're making a commitment, right? We were having a conversation. I'm on the regional board, the Unity South Central Regional Board, and we had someone, actually, one of our alternate LUT representatives has actually made his transition recently. And so we're looking at the bylaws and said, well, what do we do about that? I was reading the bylaws and it says, the board will. It didn't say the board may, didn't say the board might, didn't say the board can. It said the board will. And so what does that mean? You will do it. We are agreeing to do it. We are committing to do the thing that we say we're going to do. And there is power in that statement. There is power in making a commitment to something and following through on it. You notice how you feel when you make a commitment to do something and you actually do it? How good it feels? Part of that is our innate desire to live in integrity. We all want integrity. In nonviolent communication language, that's one of the universal human needs, universal human values, integrity. It's one of our core values here at Unity Spiritual Center Denver. To live in integrity. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. If I commit to doing something, I follow through on it. I say what I'm going to do and I do what I say. Integrity is also about wholeness. When you think about things being integrous, it's about wholeness. Nothing missing, nothing lacking. So when I say I will, I'm making a commitment to do what I say I'm going to do. And I'm going to follow through on that commitment. Have you also noticed when you say you're going to do something and you don't, how you feel? It doesn't feel too good, does it? To not be in integrity with your word. And so when we say, I will, it's a statement of our highest intention. And so we go back to the full statement, I will to will the will of God. It means I commit to choosing to know myself in my divinity. I commit to knowing my Christ self. I make a commitment to myself. Why do I want to do that? Going back to my original idea, it's a commitment to bringing forth into manifestation, into demonstration, that which reflects and embodies our divine self, our highest self, our highest intentions. It says I'm willing, I will choose to embody my divine self. Christine's going to talk about that on Wednesday. How do we embody that? And what I mean by embodiment is embodying it in mind, in spirit, and in body. I like to use this idea of recognizing, which is the mental activity, recognizing, if you will, making it known in our minds, recognizing our truth. And so we have to do it consciously. embody it in our minds, know the truth of our being. And then to realize it is to bring it into your heart. I like that. I also like the idea of the real I is. The real I is my truth. And I realize that at the depth of my being, in my heart space, in my gut. So we don't only know it up here, but when we set a clear intention to align, we realize it at the depth of our being. So recognizing it, realizing it, and then the third part of that is revealing it. That's bringing it into the body. And also bringing it into manifestation through our thinking, through our speaking, and through our acting. So it's demonstrating what we know. Again, I will to will. I commit to choosing my divine self in everything I think, everything I speak, and everything I do. And in doing that, we create, we bring forth heaven on earth. Really? Isn't that what we're here to do, I think? To live it, to demonstrate it, to be that divine self here and now. And we do that through setting that clear intention and knowing, when you, like with that dial on the radio, if you remember, if you're kind of between stations, you got a lot of static, or you sometimes dialed into something you really didn't want to listen to. And so I think it's important for us. It's interesting, I have these value cards or idea cards on my desk, and this morning I pulled them out and I just thought, okay, well, what's my card for today? And the card that I pulled out was mindfulness. And I think that is required. Because if we're not present, if we're not mindful, how do we know what we're tuned into? If we're not willing to stop and breathe and ask, connect with ourselves, body, mind, and spirit. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What is my body experiencing? We're not mindful. Then how do we know that we might want to readjust that dial a little bit? So I invite us to be mindful. Just like you're listening to your radio. What are you listening to? Is this something you enjoy? Something that feels good? Something that inspires you? Or is it just noise? And take an opportunity to adjust that dial a little bit so that you align to the frequency that you want to be broadcasting. And it's a matter of choice. Every moment we are at choice. So I invite us to use our free will choice to say yes to our soul, yes to our spirit, yes to that frequency of joy and life and abundance and prosperity and wholeness and health and vitality and all the good that we can possibly imagine that the I Am is. Choose. Commit to choosing your divine self. And be mindful of when you're choosing something different. Every moment, as the Course in Miracles says, every moment is an opportunity to choose again. Every moment. So be mindful. Let us be mindful of what we're choosing.